Okay, Mazel Tov.
Yeah. Hello, how are you in Berlin today?
I'm doing great. How about yourself?
Yeah, I'm doing great. And hello to everybody that's joining us now. I'm Samantha Amit together with my colleague Georg Pitts. How are you all today? Yeah. So, Georg, do you want to introduce why this topic is dear to you?
Yes, I'd love to. And I'll say a word or two about myself. Like Samantha, I'm a coach and love doing what I do. It doesn't really feel like work, so it's kind of fun to be here and have this conversation. And resistance is I love this expression in the title. I love this. What you resist persists, because there is this piece, and I learned this actually part of it in my coach training, that when we're resisting something, we're actually putting a lot of effort into not going where it is. So if it's a certain feeling that you don't want to feel, all the effort you put into not feeling it is energy you don't have somewhere else. And I think that is something that happens on so many different places. And I see this in my work as a coach very often when somebody, like public speaking, I want to get better at public speaking, but I'm afraid. And I'm like, okay, what happens when you feel that feeling? Oh, I don't know. I don't know how to go there. And I find this very fascinating to support people and to find and walk with people along the path, that it actually becomes easier to walk through what you're resisting than spending all the energy of resisting it. And then you have more energy to do other things and to grow. So that's by way of starting us off, handing it back to you.
Thanks so much. So, yeah, like Georg, I'm a leadership coach, a mindfulness leadership coach. And for me, mindfulness has brought me face to face with resistance. Because when you sit on a cushion and try and meditate, resistance like used to come up for me, and it still does. And so for me, it's been the biggest teacher, because when we meet resistance, as Georg said, when we are awake to it, we want to, like, the natural thing is to push it away. And that's what I've tried to do most of my life, because who wants to feel uncomfortable? Like, what is resistance? It's a feeling of, it could be frustration. It could be just something you don't feel good about in the body. If you've had a fight with somebody, you're resisting. And so anytime that you don't feel in flow, anytime that you're feeling not your best self, that's a form of resistance. And so the natural way is to try and get rid of it, like throw it back out there into the universe. And what I've experienced, Georg, is that it makes it stay even longer, especially in my body.
Yes. Yeah, I very much so. And I was responding to this aspect of it's the natural way. I don't know if I completely believe that and subscribe to it. I think it's trained. It's something we pick up in growing up. When I watch my children, especially very young, they're just shaking it off. It's like I went with my youngest at the climbing gym a couple of weeks ago. She was like getting like freaked out. And I was like, oh, I don't want to do it. And then she came down and she just literally just shook it off. So I think there's an innate wisdom we have, and you mentioned it lingers in our body when we resist it. And with that, I think you're pointing at the key in this, and that is, if we feel our body, if we allow ourselves to feel the resistance in the body, we can transcend it. And we can get through it and let it go, so that it doesn't stick around in the body. It can actually leave and complete whatever it was meant to tell us and move us forward.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that as humans, our brains are wired to try and keep us safe. And so we're on the lookout all the time to try and control our environment. And I know with myself, one of the things that when I was growing up, my parents used to fight a lot. And so when I moved into being a leader and into corporate life, I feared and resisted any kind of conflict. So I prevented myself basically from like speaking up or, setting the tone or, any kind of what I presumed as conflict, because I didn't know there was such a thing as healthy conflict. Mm-hmm. And so I resisted that because mm-hmm. in my mind, that was like my body went into fear mm-hmm. with any kind of conflict at all. Mm-hmm. So I think that, we're all different. Mm-hmm. And so for all of us here who's ever listening in right now, watching us, like what goes on for you every day? When you step into, your day, how are things going for you? What's your energy like? What brings your energy up? What brings your energy down? And often when we notice that something brings our energy down or we feel stuck, that's an indicator that there's resistance there. That's an indicator where it's a moment that you can take to actually use mindfulness and other tools. Maybe we'll talk a little bit about them, mm-hmm. of how we can actually get clear to move through the resistance, to mm-hmm. actually move to a better place, to what I call a higher place. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's a good segue to higher place. I think a key component in noticing and engaging with that for me has been to step literally into the third person. And I go as far as to use my name like, Georg, what are you doing here? What's going on here? What are you afraid of? What's holding you back? And with that, it loses its grip on me. I can take a deep breath. I get back into my body and I feel like more relaxed. And I was like, yeah, what is going on here? And the curiosity for me, combined with the third person, really opens up a space to look at what I'm doing and what's happening with more distance. And that gives me the chance to get out of my protective patterns with, you were alluding to that with the example that you experienced in your childhood with fighting. Interestingly enough, for me, it was the opposite. I've never seen my parents fight. So, and the funny thing is, we ended up at the same place. It's like, I wouldn't call myself conflict avoidant, but I never learned to fight. And I didn't, or now I have, but in my growing up, I didn't learn it. And I had the same thing. I was like, okay, but what does this look like? But there's a thing as healthy conflict? No, the right thing is if there's no conflict. So I had a similar resistance, but from a different perspective. Mm-hmm. And this really observing and understanding, no, it's happening. We're all different. Everybody who's listening here, and I'm actually curious how you experience resistance and where you experience it, because it's such a unique thing. And what has helped me, and this is one of the things that has me excited about our conversation here, Samantha, is how different it is for us, and at the same time that we can connect on it. And we can normalize by just sharing, oh yeah, I'm feeling this too, right? Oh yeah, it might look a little bit different. For me, usually when I'm like anxious, it is in my shoulders. I can feel my shoulders. I get tense. I tighten up, and I can feel the resistance. And that's something I learned through the technique of slowing down, breathing, and stepping outside of myself. Like, okay, what's actually going on here? And that is it's a fascinating thing, because the trained response, as you said earlier, it really is just push it away as far as possible so that I don't have to deal with it. I don't have to feel it. And it's like, I would describe it at the beginning when I started my work with it. It's like an abyss. You get to the edge and you're like, no, I don't want to go over that edge. So
yeah. I want to slow us down a little bit because
Okay.
you were talking about what I want to do is go back a step.
I like
And
it.
I want to, because I feel like we're so excited about, supporting the people that are listening in, that we are moving into tactics of what you can do. And we've both suggested things. You've just been talking about the third person and being the observer. I loved Eckhart Tolle's work on that, and the pain body, if you're familiar with it, and being the observer. But I want to actually go back a step and also, so there could be so many reasons again that we're resisting. And what I noticed with myself a lot was my criticism. So I wasn't able to go into the third person, or I wasn't able to practice a lot of the things. It was even hard for me to sit and meditate, because what would happen was criticism and judgment would come up.
Mm-hmm.
And I saw that today on a coaching call that I had with a client. She was very frustrated and she was criticizing everything left and center.
Mm-hmm.
But then, and I could hear it in everything she was talking about. And as you know, that's part of what we do. It's a safe space, because sometimes we need to get out this frustration. We need to get out the resistance.
Mm-hmm.
And that way we can actually see it. So the coaching space is actually a beautiful, safe space for it to happen. So she was, doing a lot of venting of her frustration, she was doing a lot of judgment. And then at the end, funnily enough, she was speaking about her own, how critical she was of herself.
Mm-hmm.
And she wasn't even noticing that much how she was actually criticizing everybody else.
Mm-hmm.
So what I want to also suggest is that this is a tool. It's a tool when you notice that you're judging or you're criticizing. It's actually not a nice way to be in the world. Believe me, I know. That's one of the main reasons that I practice mindfulness. And the definition of mindfulness is actually being present purposely in the moment, non-judgmentally.
Mm-hmm.
And what that really means is to actually watch the judge. And so when we're resisting, we're judging a lot. And that's also a natural thing, because our brains, we're wired to judge. And what we want to do is we want to shift actually into being more discerning rather than judging. It's a different kind of energy that you bring into, yeah.
I like that. I like where you're taking us, and what comes to mind for me that builds on the judging, discerning, to say a little bit more about the basics and where this is coming from. You couldn't cross a street in any major city, and for those of you who've been in India or places where traffic is not as organized as here in Berlin, or I don't know how the roads are for you, but if you don't discern, if you don't filter, if you don't cut things out, there's so many things that are flowing at you. You couldn't literally make it across the street. So it is a natural piece. It's something we learn as humans, to not process everything that hits us at face value in the moment and deal with it. We categorize, we file it away, we filter certain things we don't even notice. And that is something, when it gets to the extreme, what you were describing with your client, it gets to judging, criticizing. And I have German roots, so for me, it's very deeply in my blood and in the upbringing, that there is this look and expectation, especially in a city like Berlin, where I am right now. Everything's negative. Everybody's complaining all the time about something. If the sun's out, oh, now it's too warm. If it's raining, oh, it's raining. It's like, if the bus is on time, oh my God, I can't believe the bus is on time. The bus is too late. Oh my God. It's so this, it turns into a program. It is not something that you consciously, that you're doing. And part of the work, and I think around the mindfulness, is becoming aware that that's going on. I think for a lot of us, that's not going on. And I think we picked this topic of resistance because resistance is a perfect jump in point. Because when you look at your day, Samantha hinted at that, You can go through today and just list. You will find 10, 20 things when you pay attention where you hit resistance. You wanted something, you wanted that dessert at the lunch line, and somebody snagged it in front of you. Like, dang, why did I get this? It's like, and there's something to work with. So it doesn't always have to be like super crazy. Or it could be like, okay, the light just turned red in front of me, or it's yellow. You might be able, if you just hit the gas a little bit, you might make it. Or you can just slow down. If you can just brake and just wait, take a deep breath at the traffic light, and then take next roll. Those are all little moments where there's resistance, and we can work with that.
Yeah, absolutely. And the filter that you're talking about is so interesting because we, as you say, we have to have filters, and the filter is really our perception, how we see things and what we see. Mm-hmm. And it's so important to work on what you see, because it can be light and, day and night, and darkness and light. And that filter is very much affected by the people you are around, mm-hmm. and by the company you're in. Mm-hmm. So anybody that's had a really good manager, a good leader that's helped you to learn, that's encouraged you, that's built your leadership skills, you know what that's like, because that person's putting a good filter on things. That person's encouraging you, challenging you in a way that is very promising, and it's a way that's moving you forward, where you don't resist. Mm-hmm. Where we resist is where we have a bully, where we resist, where there's toxic stuff in the workplace. And so we naturally actually are looking out for, to almost protect ourselves as well, because that's what our brains do. And so we need to work even harder to look after ourselves. Mm-hmm. So I feel like I've said a lot. Maybe you can unpack some of that.
The one thing that really jumps at me with that is, what I hear between the lines is the aspect of biases. When we are in an environment, say we had a shitty manager or multiple, which I think unfortunately is the norm. It's very common that folks just don't know how to be good managers and how to be humane when they're managers. So you go through a couple of jobs and you have somebody who's riding you hard, who's always like on you. You develop a bias that managers are evil. They're threatening you. They always keep you on fire. You're always like, and then you get into a situation where you meet a manager that is showing up completely differently. But the filter, the bias is still there. Like you expect, so you start even seeing things that are not there, right? What you said, the light and day, how you change. I think it was Wayne Dyer who said, if we change the way we look at things, the things we look at change. And it's going back to the manager example. When you have that lens on that managers are bad, that they're working in a certain way, and then you have a different one, unless you are aware that you're filtering with that filter, you're going to slap that new manager in the same bucket. And no matter what that manager does, and it's true for all the relationships, it doesn't matter, because it falls into your filter. And I think you said like another piece that is very important: the company we keep, the people who are around us. This is one of the reasons why I'm not the fondest of being in Berlin. There are reasons for me to be here, and they align with my values. And I choose very carefully who I interact with. I avoid public transportation because it's a crowd and it's a mood that is. And if I take a bus instead of taking the subway. The subway is depressing because everybody's just like either on their screens or hunched up. I've run some experiments of engaging with people and breaking through that resistance there. But it's something to pay attention to. And for everybody who's listening here, there is there's a saying, we are the average of the 5 people we spend the most time with. So pick those people wisely, who you listen to, whose energy you're picking up, whose emotions, how they show up, whose worldview. And resistance plays into that. I think that it can be familiarity. If they trigger a resistance in you, or a feeling that is just, it's familiar. It's not comfortable, but it's familiar. Like this, when you're like bringing it back to your early example about your parents fighting, the feeling that, and I would assume it has shifted over the years, but the feeling that you had when you saw somebody fighting is very familiar. It's like a bodily reaction. And then there's a natural or trained response to push that away, which gives us a good chance, if we're not aware of it, to be around people who have a similar bodily reaction to people being in fights, which makes it really hard to learn constructive and healthy conflict. So it's really interesting how these different layers are related. I'm not quite sure if I did a great job at unpacking it. Maybe I twisted it even more. So I'll let you do some more unpacking.
I'm very sensitive, so I'm very sensitive to the people I'm with. Mm-hmm. I clear my energy. So like water clears energy, being in nature clears your energy. Breath is excellent for helping to calm activate the parasympathetic nervous system. So just as you're speaking to us now, everybody, just like take some deep breaths, and that really helps. What I want to talk about now a little bit is, because you spoke about being curious and you spoke about slowing down. And the problem is that we've been programmed, as you say, to speed up, and we've been programmed to move fast. Sometimes a lot of my clients lack resources. And so, things are busy. Busy is an understatement. And when you're so busy and moving from one thing to the next in execution mode, what I'm finding is, let alone there's no time to think and pause, sometimes you don't even notice the resistance. Okay, the resistance is in the unconscious, and that's actually very unhealthy, because what happens is it builds up, and the resistance in the body is not good for you, and you actually become sick or something happens. Unfortunately, that's what happens. And so in order to slow down, in order to become curious, you have to really consciously challenge yourself. You have to create some structure in your day to slow down. There's a book that I recommended recently on LinkedIn called Slow Productivity by Cal Newport. He's amazing. And so that's one avenue, to read something like that. And that gives you the academics in the background to slow down. There's another book called, I don't know if you can see this, Wherever You Go, There You Are, by John Kabat-Zinn. This is a book that teaches meditation. There's so much out there, and I'll be dropping into the comments after today's session. I'll drop in a free course that I've created for my clients that helps them after meetings to actually stop and write down their thinking, their feelings, and sensations in the body. And when we do this, what we're actually doing is we're taking the unconscious and we're bringing it into the conscious. Because what most of my clients do, which most leaders do, is they go from meeting to meeting. If they've got a moment, they'll get onto their email and do email, or get onto their phones. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong in that, but what you're doing is you are not having the opportunity to be curious and check in with yourself and say, how am I right now? Because that muscle of being an observer, that's, I think, what I'm now getting to what I wanted to say before. Becoming the observer, you actually have to build this into, like becoming an observer, it's not a natural thing to become. Like, you've been doing it for years, Georg, and what we want to do is we want to inspire people here today. If you've rocked up and you're here, yay, you're on the path, you're already doing it, you already care about your mental health, you care about your emotional health, you care about your body, you care about your spiritual health, and then that's why you're here. And so you have to find ways to slow down and start observing. So you need some tools in place. And there are many, many ways you can do this.
Yeah. And I think you're making a really good point. I was talking with a client about this, about meditation practice, and I've been practicing for many, many years. And the starting point is the challenge, because I think what happens is what you just described, the busyness with like a double Y, is so normal. It's normalized. And the challenge in that is that it isn't how we work. I like the expression, right? Nature never rushes and it gets everything done. It's like spring never rushes. Fall never rushes. Summer doesn't rush. It happens. Like the flowers bloom. Sometimes there's a hailstorm and then the flowers don't make it. And you have new flowers, and trees have second shoots. And so there is and you said that. I think this is a very important point. We can start with water. Go for a swim in a lake. Go for a walk in your park. You don't have to, right? If you can go somewhere into nature, great. I'm just looking at 2 massive trees here out of my window. It's honey in my heart, and it helps me connect, because for me, when I look at a tree, I can get into the state of just completely being like, oh my God, when I try with my mind to understand that there are thousands of leaves on that tree that somehow grew, that somehow all get water, that somehow all do photosynthesis. And I'm like, how does this? And then boom, I get to a point where it's just like my mind just checks out, because I can't comprehend it. And that is, I think that's a really important point that you're making around getting started and giving yourself permission to slow down. There's a book that came out years ago in the tech scene. It's called Do More Faster. And I think maybe I need to publicly commit to this. I want to write a book that's called Do Less Slower. Because that's what we need. We don't need more things in our life. It's the slowing down and the consciously taking 5 minutes between calls, 10 minutes between calls. Don't schedule them back to back at all. Give yourself half an hour in between. I love your suggestion and what you're doing with your course, that have people journal, write it down. And Cal Newport talks about this, the context switching. It's just, you're in the loop. And to round it up and hand it back to you, I think the resistance is actually what drives us to not connect to our body. Because when you go from meeting to meeting, when you pause, you realize how tired you are. You realize how exhausted you are. You realize how drained your body is of the bullshit you just listened to for 2 hours or whatever it was. But when you just hop on the next call, you're just like, oh yeah, I'm good, I'm here. You're just doing it. When you slow down, you just realize how much noise there is and how little signal. And that is scary, because then it goes deeper and we get to face ourselves and our humanity.
Yeah, absolutely. When we slow down, it's not easy. First, it's a strange thing to do for us because we're not used to it. So both of us are here encouraging you that slowing down is what we need. you experience that when you go on holiday and you're doing so much less, and then you come back, and then within, sometimes it's days, you get back into, like running on the treadmill. And so it's foreign for us during our everyday week to take those moments and those pauses. And if you're a runner, I've got clients that run, I've got clients that bike, those are like magic moments for them, because it's like, that's their time. And what if you created some of that also during your workday? You don't have to wait to get onto the bike. You don't have to wait, to go away on holiday.
Mm-hmm.
I really believe that we have to find those moments within the day where we check in with ourselves. And if we check in when we see, I'm feeling good, and I'm feeling centered, I'm feeling calm, I'm not feeling overwhelmed or frazzled, then that's fantastic. Okay. And if you're noticing the overwhelm and you're noticing the frazzled, that's also fantastic. That's even more fantastic, because when you notice it, that's when your power actually comes in, because you have so many things, what you can do. You've read things, you've seen movies, you've been on courses, you're listening to us now. You have the tools. It's just about taking the courage to not go on automatic pilot of what you do day after day, but to decide, if I'm showing up here for this live session with Samantha and Georg, then it means that I want to create more positive change in my life. I want to live more fully in the moment. And I want to be able to pass through this resistance.
Yeah. And I love what you're saying, because it's hinting at one of the key pieces in it, and that's intentionality. I think the antidote to resistance is intention. That you put in the intention. And I think one very helpful aspect is to look at your days in reverse. How are you ending your days? How are you going to bed? Is the phone the last thing you see? Is a screen the last thing you see? Are you seeing some sort of internal, external gratitude for the day? Are you looking at the day? Are you taking into your night how you want to start the next day, what you want to do in the next day? And then I think one really good starting point for this, for the slowing down, is when you wake up in the morning, give yourself an extra 10 minutes. If you can get this to 30 minutes or an hour, even better. But start with a little bit of time that your kids don't get, that your partner does, nobody around you gets that. It's your time. And you get to slowly start the day, sit and meditate, read in a favorite book, whatever it is. I would recommend not spending it on a screen, but sitting there slowly, waking to the day. Right now, it's springtime here. The birds are out early in the morning. It's amazing to hear that. Just listen to that for a couple of minutes, or just look at the sky, see clouds flying by, whatever. It's really just simple things. And with that, go into your day a little slower and just notice how it carries through the whole day.
Yeah, I can just feel the energy. Beautiful, beautiful. So going back to the intention, I 100% agree with you. It all starts with, that decision, that intention that you're putting out there. And I want to come back to what you spoke about with the permission piece, because you can have the intention, but if you don't give yourself permission to take those 10 minutes, because your to-do list is just too long. I can just saying that I like feel a little bit of pressure in my body now, because I know I've also got lots of wants. Lots of wants, and some of us have a lot of have-tos, and we've got a lot of responsibilities. Believe me, they're going to be there tomorrow and the next day and the next day. Nothing's going to change.
Yeah. That's that. I think that is probably one of the biggest challenges. It's like I've worked with a lot of people on time management, and like you get the getting things done and to-do lists and whatnot. And what I found in my hardest times with the most resistance, with like really dark nights of the soul, what kept me going was a very simple thing, and that was do one thing a day. It sounds absolutely ridiculous, but it's like it literally is what helped me survive. Just one thing.
That would be too painful for me. I wouldn't do that. But for me, it's the compassion that I've been, and I'm doing that a lot now, and I'm bringing it in also to my coaching. And like for me, even giving yourself permission to take 10 extra minutes in the morning without maybe waking up 10 minutes earlier is an absolute gift. And that's being very compassionate to yourself. It's being loving and kind to yourself.
Yeah.
And I do realize, I spoke to somebody today that she needs to come into the office 4 days a week. And her team is actually all remote, and she's working with nobody in the office. And my heart just went out to her. And the truth is that I do realize that some of you may be listening to this recording. Not a lot of the things we're saying are maybe not realistic for you right now and not possible. And that's okay. So first of all, just breathe. That's okay. But there is something that you can do. There is one thing you can do. Like Georg said, choosing how you go to sleep. If you choose, okay, I'm not going to wake up and the first thing maybe will be my phone, or I'm not going to go to sleep and the last thing will be my phone. You choose something that's within your, circle of influence, which is the Stephen Covey work. So find something that resonates with you from this call. And if anybody has a question, by the way, please pop it in the comments. We'll see that, and we would love to take some time for any Q&A now that you may have regarding anything that we've spoken about.
Yeah, that's a good point. I want to second that. And yes, absolutely. I think I think I can say that for both of us. We are in a blessed situation that we get to do the work we absolutely love and that fulfills us. And we've both been in different careers before that look different. And it probably would have landed back then differently for us too. So for me, there's the empathy that it's a journey. And as Samantha said, you're on the path, right? You're here, you're listening to this, or you're on the path. And I want to underline what you just said, and it's this aspect: choose what you can control, even if it's the tiniest thing. Is the in the mindfulness work, in this work of getting to know your resistance, consistency is the name of the game. Like if you, I'll guarantee, if you change how you go to sleep, the last 15 minutes before you go to bed, the first 10 minutes after you wake up, and you do this for a month, you will be a different person. You don't have to quit your job. You don't have to go. No, you can do something very small. And if you do it consistently, the impact is massive.
Absolutely. This is why we're here today, because of the massive transformation we had, and I've got goosebumps, and the massive transformation that we see with our clients makes us want to pass on, some of these like really simple things that you can do that you already want to do. I want to touch on another point. which I think we all suffer from, and I suffer from too when I'm on, when I'm mindless. And 50% of the time we're on automatic pilot, and we think we can control things, and we think that we want to make, until we actually figure out that we live in uncertainty. And everything around us is basically uncertain. And that's actually also something that can be quite magical if we don't resist it. Because it could be like, really, you can become curious around what your next moment's going to be. Like, who's going to be in the meeting? Like, how is my team going to show up today? Like, what's going on for them? And so when we come in with expectations, or we come in with, like thinking that things should be in a certain way, that's where frustration, that's where judgment comes in, that's where resistance is at its all-time high. And today I was speaking to a client who's in the financial industry, and he's very analytical. And people that are data-driven and analytical want to try and control everything, but you can't. And so, yeah, I'm going to pause. I'm just noticing the time, and I'm thinking it could be a good time for us to start wrapping up today's discussion.
Yeah. I think it's a good point, and I think it's fitting towards the end, the uncontrollable, and that the only thing that's certain is uncertainty. And I would caveat that, or put around that, preface it with, that's a very lofty thing. It's very difficult to really dive into equanimity around that. And it's like there's plenty of tests where you can test how well you can do with ambiguity. And there's actually some fascinating research. Maybe we can link some in the comments. I'll dig some up, that shows studies. And the only thing that I've found that truly changes and enables you to deal with ambiguity differently is mindfulness work. Meditation, becoming more mindful, allows you to handle uncertainty better. There's nothing else that I've seen, and if people listening have something else, put it in the comments, let us know. But it's really, this is like a quintessential argument for mindfulness and for becoming more mindful, because it reminds us that in the end we don't control anything, and when we surrender, we can influence and we can dance with the things that are around us. So we've touched a lot, and yes, several. I'm going to touch on a few things that we mentioned. Slowing down, I think, is a key component. I would say whatever you can do to slow down a little bit, that's going to help, because that is the first ingredient to allow you to really become aware of the resistance in your body. And starting small, I think that's the other piece I want to underline. It doesn't have to be, you don't have to quit your job. You don't have to find a new career. I'm not a big fan of table flip everything. Find a small thing, figure out what that is, start doing it on a regular basis. And yeah, I think that's a good summary. Thank you so much. This has been a lot of fun, and I feel like there's more to come.
Yeah. So we're here for you. You can ask more questions anytime in the comments. If you tag us with our names, connect with us and tag us, then we will reply to you. Thank you for somebody that's written now about the journey you've created about slowing down and stopping judging. It's a beautiful feeling when we are connected. I would say resistance is a disconnect. Yeah. And when you connect, like I feel it now, like my heart's going out to everybody and to you here, Georg. When there's a connection, just breathe into it. It's the most beautiful feeling. It's like, yeah, it's very special. So good luck.
Yes.
Be curious. Set your intention.
Mm-hmm.
Give yourself permission. Be kind to yourself.
Yeah.
Try not to judge yourself. If you set that intention to be off your phone at the end of the day and you're not, it's okay. Even if you do it part of the week, that's fantastic. And celebrate your wins, really celebrate your journey. You're amazing and you can do it. And thank you so much for being with us here.
Yeah. Thank you. Stay curious.
Thank you so much, Georg, for partnering with me here.
This has been amazing.
Bye, everybody. Bye-bye.
Namaste.